Okay, welcome everyone. I think we're going to start. We've got people still coming in. Welcome to 2021. Let's hope it's a bit less horrible than 2020. Although I know, we've talked about before that a lot of artists actually rather flourished during lockdown. I don't know if that's going to be true again now, but I know it was true for quite a lot of you. But thanks for coming and realizing that this is a second Friday. So it's always nice that you've managed to find us and join us anyway. And we've got quite a lot of people so far. So just a quick, particularly for those of you who haven't joined us before, if you want to keep yourself muted. We try to keep these sessions informal because otherwise Zoom can become a bit formal very easily. But if you would like to ask a question of the speaker, just either raise your hand and hopefully I can see you, in which case I'll ask you to unmute. And otherwise, we will just kind of keep things going. I will put my timer on so that those people who are sharing don't run over time. So I'm going to give you a maximum of 10 minutes each. And after that, I'm going to come in and shut you up. So great. So I think we are going to start with Rachel.
Okay, fine. I'll share my screen. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. Okay. Hi everyone. I'm Rachel Magdeburg. I don't think I know anyone in this group, but this is the start, isn't it? So I'm currently based in the Midlands, in Wolverhampton, where I'm doing a PhD. So I'm an artist. I also write as well, and I'll just show you a series of paintings that I did last year. Sort of finished some of them in December. And so I'm thinking about them for this year and sort of developing them. And that's really it, really. I'll sort of just whiz through them. I'm not going to go too heavy on the theory, to be honest. I don't think it's probably the forum for that. And they're works of art in their own right. So, these paintings they all share the same motif. So it's they repeat the same motif of a white slice of bread. So these sort of started off as this kind of group of initial studies, trying to sort of work out some ideas, particularly about, my PhD is on painting, contemporary painting and the Anthropocene, and it goes off in lots of different directions. And particularly I'm looking at kind of notions of the still life, dead nature, and the relationship between objects and their backgrounds and their disconnections or connections to their kind of environments, I suppose, whatever that environment might be. And that might be a kind of a painted environment. So I kind of started off this series of watercolors with some of these ideas, and really wanted to sort of develop this notion of this, what we think is in the background, this kind of old Western humanist notion of nature in the background and human activity is the foreground and active, and nature's kind of dead and inert. I'm really trying to sort of play with that in these paintings. So the center of them, so what would be the bread, is really just the substrate of the paper. So that's just the material ground of the paper. So they're kind of completely hollow. So what would be the foreground, the piece of bread, now becomes the background, the material substrate, or the ground. So playing with some of these ideas within this work. Obviously, the sort of slice of white bread is quite symbolic, quite loaded. It's also quite mundane, so it's got that kind of complexity of something very banal and something incredibly complex, manufactured, engineered, a sort of a real beacon, I suppose, of capitalism. And in these sort of paintings, I'm sort of trying to link kind of this capitalist and colonialist kind of past through using watercolor as well, sort of watercolors history and natural history illustration and early voyages of discovery as well. So I'm just going to whiz through a few of these. So I draw in different traditions of pictorial representation. So here is an element or a kind of a botched version of Hokusai's wave. And I'll draw the paintings of the bread are from life. So it's quite an easy thing to paint, but because there's nothing really there. And then these imagined backgrounds. So they're either from another piece of artwork, or that they're entirely just in the making of the painting. A brushstroke will suggest a palm tree, parts of it might suggest a cloud. So that's the kind of the material workings of working with watercolor. A flick of the wrist suggests perhaps a bird, etc. Trying to think of else previous to this, I was working with actual bread. It's this very kind of absorbative material, and so these were kind of the next step of that kind of working. I also kind of allude to kind of Renaissance paintings, particularly with their religious and mythological narratives as well. And creating just a very, so this kind of juxtaposition of observational and very sort of empirical research, looking at things, and then completely imagined speculative background. And playing also sort of resisting that kind of perspectival allure of kind of this deep procession into space, and trying to sort of challenge that by the positioning of the bread as well, that can kind of mix what you think is sort of this depth in a piece of work. And to be honest, I think I'm going to leave it there. So then there might be some time for some questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody like to kick off by asking Rachel a question about the work or about the process? Well, I'm going to kick off then in that case. So I'm curious that you said you were working with real bread before. Do you want to just talk about how you were doing that and kind of there's an interesting, to me, cultural thing about using white bread as a symbol of non-nature, I suppose, a symbol of artificial. So I'd just be interested to hear you talk a bit more about.
Yeah, so worked with bread in sort of two ways, really. First was a sort of series of work toasting bread to encourage it to burn, so to sort of create a sort of chemical reaction, and those then became the grounds of painting. So a sort of series of quite, on the surface of things, quite sort of modernist paintings, but their substrate was burnt bread. And then I did a large installation at the university I'm based at, a sort of a process piece of work, painting like many loaves of bread. I think in the end it was something like 500 slices of bread with watercolor. But the climate that I was working in was very humid, and so by doing this, the bread, it doesn't mold or rot. So I've still got the bread; it's entirely preserved.
That's scary.
So it just dries, and so these kind of chemical changes within bread, I was particularly interested in. So its absorptive qualities, how its material changes if you burn it, but also if you dry it out. And yeah, I don't see bread as it for me. It's both natural and cultural. It's neither one or the other. It's both. You know, it's what Donna Haraway would call a nature culture. It's so it is highly manufactured, but you know, it's also a plant. So it's both of those things. And I suppose then sort of bringing that into a sort of painterly practice, really I wanted to sort of draw on more of a kind of imaginative role for it as well.
Jane, yes, you had a question. Do you want to ask it?
Yes, I'm curious. Rachel, did you have a short list in preparation to sort of make a decision? How did you come to the decision and choose good old sliced white bread?
Yeah.
Did you consider anything else?
So I work in a series kind of way. So I've got a whole batch of paintings, lettuces that are very different, cabbages, with cucumbers, right. But they are all of them based on everyday things that I'm seeing generally in the supermarket, some things I've got in the studio. So it's very much a near at hand kind of product. You know, it's not an ecological practice of going out somewhere. It's not site based. It's very much object based, of a consumerist nature.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think we should move on just because of time, but thank you, Rachel. And if you want to share your email or a website address with people, if you just put that into the chat, then other people can find you if they want to do that. Great. Okay, good. So let's move on to Martin. Are you ready to?
Yes.
Do your thing?
I just thought I'd mention that I think my thing is a bit slightly more formalised in the sense that I've actually written something out.
That's okay.
But I was slightly concerned that it may be a bit longer than your prescribed period of time. I run it through at about 15 minutes, but I might be able to truncate it a bit.
Talk fast.
Talk first.
Talk fast.
Talk fast. Yeah. Okay. So when I put this to Richard, I just had a working title in my head about a mystery object. I thought I'd try and talk about a mystery object. But so for this contribution, I wanted to focus on the earth part as well as the art part, art.earth. And the aim was to look at a landscape from a geological perspective, because that's kind of what I'm very interested in, and also reflect on this from an artist's perspective. To do this, I wanted to go on a virtual field trip outside and take you with us to Goodrington on the South Devon coast. Our visit will of necessity be very brief, but hopefully will make some sort of impression. I should say, really, before I start, some of this will involve sharing content with you. So I have to issue a disclaimer that I haven't actually done this before on Zoom. Also, by way of apology, I know that some of the photos are rather small and might be a little bit more difficult to see, but unfortunately I can't change this. I was going to say a couple of words before I start about myself. So after graduating from college up north and leaving that northern heritage and landscape of an industry behind, I gravitated towards London and became a fine art printmaker. But 15 years ago, quite by chance, I picked up a book about the life of William Smith, the man who published the first geological map of Britain in 1815. I wasn't looking for it, but I've always liked maps, ordnance survey maps, road maps, street maps, and geological maps. This book was entitled The Map That Changed the World and was revolutionary, challenging the established theological orthodoxy of the time that the world was created by God in all its complexity in 4004 BC. I didn't know much about geology, but the book certainly changed my world, and also set up, incidentally, a slight tussle in my head as to how to respond to something as an artist, which I initially experienced as a science. So the location, if I can just load my material, if you give me a second. So there we are. Can you see that?
We can, yes.
So this is Goodrington, just a general view of where the site location is. And I think I'll just try quickly to indicate that by saying this is the north end of north and south ends of Goodrington Beach, and my site location is down here at this end. It's just slightly off screen, but you can see this is a very beautiful, tranquil landscape of South Devon, very attractive to tourists and visitors in the summer. The location lies within the English Riviera Geopark, which covers an area roughly defined by Babbacombe in the north of Torquay and St Mary's Bay just to the south of Berry Head. The geology of the geopark is largely dominated by rocks of the Devonian system and are succeeded over a significant area by the identifiably red beds of the Permian and Triassic systems. So the purpose of the trip is to look at some geological structures that underlie the surface of the landscape. So let's try and, that's interesting. How can I remove your picture, Richard? Oh, there it is. So this is a general view of the southern end of Goodrington Beach. And in this picture, you can see in the foreground on the right-hand side, down here are Permian date rocks. Up here, you've got Devonian date rocks, and right in the middle there, if I can just highlight that little feature, is where we're actually going. So I'll move on from that one and just look in some detail before we go any further. This is an example of a Permian, what they call a Permian breccia, a deposit which is created if you think of sudden violent rainstorms in an otherwise hot and arid mountain landscape, washing out rocks and mud and depositing them at their base and beyond in successive waves, this is what that is. So we'll quickly move from that. Oops, beg your pardon. You can tell I haven't done this before, can't you?
You're doing quite well. You're all right. We've got 5 minutes.
In front of you there now are the Devonian beds I pointed out in the first picture, but I think I've got something which shows a bit of a close-up there. Yes, there we are. These are Devonian beds, and they're comprised of mudstone sediments, which are these finely layered beds in the pink mudstone, but they also combined and alternate with beds of volcanic material, which are much thicker, like this up here and the one down at the bottom here. As you can see, they all slope gently upwards from left to right, which might be worth remembering. So as we leave that and move on, we're getting close to the location I want now, which is this, we've crossed the beach, as you can see. We've got on the right-hand side here is the surface of one of the beds of volcanic material. But in this instance, rather than laying flat, it's rising about 45 degrees to the horizontal of the beach. And perhaps we can have a better look if I say to you that the next one we'll take from this front angle. Thank you. So here we go, looking at it. So the bed we were just looking at would have been this one here on the face of it, but here, of course, we're looking in cross section, as we are the whole of this feature. The cross section is created by the conjunction of sea and land, allowing us to achieve our aim of seeing one of the geological structures that underlie the landscape. First, I apologize for the lack of scale in this photo, but to give you an idea, a man would be about the height of the lowest part of the lowest fold, which is about here, really. So you can see that hopefully gives a little bit of scale to the whole system. You've probably guessed by now that this is a fold, or to be precise, two folds of a section of the dark pink mudstones and the grey volcanic beds we saw earlier. And you can see that the alternating relationship between the beds has been preserved despite the folding. So just to make sure we're clear what we're looking at, these beds, if I can delineate them, fold in this kind of fashion here. As you can see, it's a bit wobbly drawing over this. The official term for this, used to describe this phenomenon, is meso, meaning middle-sized folding. And so it's not enormous, but it's not tiny either. And the interpretation of what we're looking at is to do with the movement of the Earth's crust, due to large forces elsewhere, creating pressure and squeezing the bed so much that they move together to relieve it, creating a fold, or in this case, two successive folds. It is also called crustal shortening because of that. Of course, that's what happens. Also, they folded over so much that they have, as a whole, become inclined to the left. So if we take the vertical, just to emphasize what I'm saying, you can see the steep angle of the fold. And the second fold on the right, the two sides of it are almost parallel. It's almost closed entirely. So let's move on. The process of erosion and collapse that created this cliff face, having been going on for a very long time, and the beach is littered with debris created by this process, as well as bedrock. There are blocks and boulders, slivers of stone and pebbles all mixed together and embedded in sandy shingle. About 15 meters down the beach is the second location on our field trip, where the idea of my working title, The Mystery Object, originated. So let's clear that and see if you can have a look at this.
Martin, I'm going to give you 3 more minutes.
Right.
Sorry.
That's all right. This is a close-up of it. It turns out to be what I think is a chapter of the history of the feature we will be looking at, a fallen section of the triple fold in the cliff. I can't prove it, but that's what it appears to be. So it lies here like a prehistoric sarsen stone. But my assumption is that it's not in situ in its original position, but is where it fell during the process of demolition. And I'll just go to the end, in that this concludes my attempt, if you like, to give some geological interpretation. But the brief I set myself at the beginning was also to try and acknowledge that I have a personal response to make. And I can do that with the help of this final photograph, which is taken much further down the beach. From the top of the cliff on the land, as it were, we might say that we are in a familiar landscape, but down here on the beach, at the edge of the land, we're presented with a confusion of configurations without an obviously apparent meaning. Where we are is at a place of change, a frontier or a boundary between one element and another in a dynamic environment, which is enacted by the ritual of the tide's ebb and flow and the conditions of the sea. We're at a threshold between two states or two identities, where the things we have been looking at exist between what they were and what they will become, with an identity belonging to neither one or the other. In other words, we're in a liminal space at this threshold between land and sea. And I'll conclude it there. Thanks very much, Richard.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Martin. I'm going to sorry, bear with me. We are recording this, so if you want to go back and revisit those slides or any of the other work, it will be up on the website later today. We do have one question from Julie. So, Julie, do you want to just come in and ask your question? Because I think actually Martin's background as a printmaker, I think it's a very good, interesting question to ask. Where's Julie? There she is. So, are you there? All right. Well, Julie's question is, do you ever gather your mineral samples and use them for pigments? So in other words, do you join these two parts of your life with your background as an artist and your current fascination with geology?
The short answer to that is no, I don't use pigments in that sense, because I'm interested in structural geology, if you like, and structural phenomena of geology. That doesn't mean to say that I haven't engaged with geology in other ways, which I have, and I've made ceramics. I've used textiles. I've even used frottage, and probably that's enough for the time being to be going on with.
Yeah,
I'm aware of the time. Oh, can I just ask one question myself?
You can.
I've never been at a Zoom meeting, or really, do I recall any other meeting where I've seen another Broadbent?
No.
I'd love to know who Ruth Broadbent is.
Ruth, hello.
Oh. Pleased to meet you.
Are you distantly related?
I've no idea. She's talking, but I think she's muted.
Yeah, you are muted. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I saw your name on the thing, so I was intrigued. And bizarrely, your name shows up on the Zoom as Richard Broadbent, which is my dad's name. So I saw Richard Broadbent. I thought, what's my dad doing here?
Well, I'll just confuse you a little further by saying that I'm actually called Martin.
Yeah.
In that my parents chose to call me by my second name. But pleased to meet you anyway.
Yeah, and you. Yeah. We'll have to now find out if we are related somehow.
Julie, we did ask your question, and so if you want to go back and look at the video, you can catch up on that. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Martin. Richard, Martin. Jane, let's go on to you, and let's just see if you can try once again to share your screen. And if that doesn't work, I will, I've got at least one of your images I can bring up, but
Well, hi, Richard, and hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Yeah, fine, thank you. I'm not going to attempt to share my screen with other images. I'm
Okay.
still practicing.
Fine.
So if anyone is interested in looking what I've been up to the last couple of years, they can always go on my membership page and have a look at my links. But to start from the very beginning, as an artist, I do not limit myself at all. So I'm always exploring different subjects and investigating different techniques. So you might call me the forever student, I don't know. But this particular body of work that I'm going to speak about today, I titled Eco-Fashion Art. And it all began in early 2019. And I was having a bit of a wobbly about my art. And I'd been reading some articles about there's just too much art in the world. And I'm just thinking, there is. And I am just adding to that pile. And so I was having this internal discussion about how I could create art and link it to something that would be worthwhile and where I was utilizing what I already had. So I was giving this a lot of thought, and one of my major ways and approaches to making work is collage. And when I look back on my life, I've collaged forever in every area. From very humble beginnings and watching my mum do exactly the same thing. And that we always bought our clothes secondhand. We always bought items for the house secondhand where we possibly could. And then we just collaged them together and made, well, in my mum's case, a beautiful home. And I think I've sort of followed in her footsteps and her creative skills, which she passed a lot on to me. So I am a collector of things. And as I say, I'm a big fan of collaging. So in my studio, I have a huge amount of collected material, mostly papers, a lot of fabrics, and various other things. And they've all been generated from where I've been painting, and I might have cropped a painting, or I've been printing at uni and it's a failed piece of print. I tend not to throw anything away. So I thought, now, this is a starting point. How can I use these in my work to get some sort of message across on an ecological issue? And having always had a real interest in fashion, textiles and surface design, I began to think about this huge, huge challenge that we have with the fashion industry. And I'm sure you're all very, very aware that the fashion industry is one of the major polluters on this planet. In particular, we have to reference that to fast throwaway fashion. And this is a problem that isn't actually going away. This is a problem that's being exacerbated and developed. And with the coming of the internet, and also with the situation that we've been thrown into, you're getting more and more people selling the most cheap, easy to produce clothes online. So I thought, well, do you know, I'm going to make work with what I already have. It's a discipline. I'm not going to buy anything. It's only going to be what I've found and what I already have. So how was I going to do this? So my first starting point was just to look through my materials and select papers that sort of went together, that spoke to me. And then I started placing them on a support and messing about with them. I might cut them, I might tear them, just creating shapes, but eventually aiming towards a figurative element in relation to fashion. So it was quite exciting, and the image that I sent to you, Richard, was one of the first that I did. And there was just, I had this wonderful piece of paper where I just, at the end of the day, transferred what was left on my palette onto a piece of paper. I do that all the time. I don't throw anything away. So if I've got paint left, I always create another piece of surface design with what I've got left over. And it was very, very random. So the image is tended to develop somewhat organically. But then I was getting a little bit stuck. And so I started referencing fashion photography. Now, the one that Richard's just put up on the screen was one of the first that I did. And the centerpiece of it, with like this buttons on this cloak, was a piece of paper that was, it just had paint transferred onto it in a random fashion. So, as I say, things tended to develop organically. And it was just an intuitive thing that paper went with that paper. And then I sort of did introduce some elements where I painted papers to go in the composition. I felt I was cheating a bit, really, but I was still only using what I had in my studio. So that was my premise. When I'm doing a project like this, I tend to be quite strict with myself. So I tested the water. I did a few collages and I put them into a local exhibition at Bruton. It was an open exhibition and they were received really well. And I sold them all. And I had some really wonderful feedback from other artists who liked the idea of what I was doing, in that I was using what I already have, cross-referencing the fashion industry and trying to get people to be aware and make changes of how they buy and select their clothing and to use what they already have, you know, make it last. So that was the narrative that I was aiming for. It's quite a limited narrative, really. But as I say, the images were received okay, and lots of lovely feedback about the project. So I decided that I would develop it further and make much larger work, which is a challenge for me because I don't tend to work very, very large scale. But I like a challenge.
I'm going to give you 2 more minutes, Jane.
Right, I like a challenge. I went on to have a wonderful exhibition with 3 other people in Shaftesbury, and the work was received reasonably well, but it had its drawbacks because I was exhibiting with 3 artist friends who were more traditional than I and responded to the landscape. So my work was very, very different, but it was an opportunity to get it out there. I would say that I wanted to display the work free of a frame, and just let it be more ephemeral and let it sort of take its own course. But the restrictions of the gallery and curators, they want everything framed. So it was framed. So the project's, it's had its limitations. And, you know, if I do a little short analysis on it, yes, I've created an awareness. I had some big boards in the gallery actually saying how we pollute the world with the fashion industry, and then on the another big display board sort of saying to people how we could make changes. But the project, you know, when I analyse it, it has its limitations, and although I'm using what I already have, I'm still adding to the pile in some way. and also the papers I'm using often are impregnated with different chemicals and, you know, painted with acrylic, which has plastic in it. So it sort of echoes the situation of the fashion industry in a way, in that, you know, you're facing a huge challenge in changing so many aspects of how our clothes are made, manufactured, supplied to us, etc. But it's been an exciting journey, and I probably will still continue with it, but try to develop a wider narrative in relation to the issue. Thanks for listening. Sorry about no visuals.
That's okay. If you want to send me some more images, I can always put them up on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Link you to your site as well. I have a question, which I think is a general question, actually, to anybody who's making work that you think is speaking to a particular issue, and that is how important or otherwise is it to put that in text to actually explain that, or should the work be allowed to give its own narrative? Jane, you start, because you talked about how that links with the fashion industry and the whole dilemma about materials, and the fact that it's very, very hard now to find materials that are not made of plastic.
Exactly. And as I say, it's within our materials as well that we use as artists. So it's a thread that goes, you know, all the way through. This was a hard one about the narrative things. Should it speak for itself? If I take the experience of the body of work being in the gallery, a lot of people came to it and didn't understand it. But I qualify that by saying this is a provincial gallery that, generally speaking, will exhibit traditional work, heavily focused on still lifes, landscapes, etc. And I felt for that audience, I needed to sort of explain. They didn't really know what I was doing. But then I thought, well, they don't need to know, you know, it's that age-old thing. Let them go on their own journey and make what they want. But that wasn't my initial aim. So, you know, it's not a perfect world. And I just felt it's not a major step. It's a little step in addressing it. And let's see where it takes me, and perhaps I can extend it. And make a stronger, more broader narrative in relation to that issue.
Thank you. Yeah. Does anybody else want to come in on that, or ask any other question to Jane? Yeah, Ellie.
Yes, I've just located your website, and I've been sort of scrolling through. Very interesting textures, but you were talking about narrative. A lot of them have figures in there, so it would be quite easy to faces and figures. It would actually be quite easy to enter into an imaginary narrative. I'm wondering if those figures or faces just emerge, or whether you already have a preconceived idea that you're going to use faces or figures.
I have a love of the human figure. So it's something that will often come into my work. I'm just fascinated by the human figure. And as I say, I did reference famous fashion photography, okay. And I'm a printmaker as well. On a very basic level, I have a love of simple monoprinting. So I can sort of draw a face, and I can introduce that with line. I absolutely adore the line, and you'll probably see that throughout my work.
Yes, yes.
But I also love the randomness of mark making. I like that. When I say random, sometimes it can't be totally random. I always think of Matisse's snail and dropping the pieces of paper and stuff like that. But I sort of try and have that element. But I do agree with you. If you look at them, I think you will reference fashion and by the titles, because I did individually title them. So that had a lead in for people who need a title. You know, there's that big argument whether you need a title, whether you don't need a title.
Right. I'm going to.
So there endeth my little talk. Thanks,
you.
Richard.
Thank you, Jane. And thanks. I'm going to stop there because we're running out of time. And Bob, you're going to talk about some work with crosses. And because you're having trouble sharing, I'm going to just bring up some of those images and you can talk and you can tell me to turn them off.
Well, can we try? Can you hear me?
I'll try it again.
Yeah, because I
go on then, give it another try.
What happens if that comes? I've got an image here on the screen at the moment. Is that magically showing?
No, it's not showing yet.
Share screen.
Oh.
Hey, good. Okay, we got it.
You got something?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we got it.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I can't see. It's amazing. You can't see what other people are seeing. Okay. Right, so that should work then. How's that showing up? What are you actually seeing? Are you just seeing a sort of a great big?
We're seeing the entrelac piece.
And then that's sort of stuck in the corner. Is it stuck in the corner?
Yeah. So bring it in the middle.
And then you're seeing a load of other stuff.
Yeah, I'm seeing your desktop.
Oh right. Oh really? God. Amazing.
Yeah, we are.
So that's wobbling about, is it?
It's wobbling about. Yeah.
Hey, great.
Isn't technology amazing?
Oh, amazing. Okay. Would it be better if I put this in the middle then?
Yeah, if you click on that little green button at the top, see the top left.
It says top left.
Yeah, that one. Click on that one.
Oh, it's a full screen, right?
There you go.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, got it.
Oh, amazing. Isn't that wonderful? Okay. I did this one a couple of months ago and I put it on Facebook and I got someone posted a comment. It's in German. Ist das mit Boys zu tun? Or in English, has that got something to do with boys, i.e. Joseph Beuys? And I was wondering if it was some kind of put down, first of all, or at least some dismissive, saying that you can then simply put something down to a reference to another, or put something down by making a reference to another artwork or another artist. So I was kind of then thinking, well, where did this cross or my use of crosses come from? And so I kind of started thinking back where I've actually used this cross. Hold on a second. How do I get out of this thing?
If you click the escape button, it'll go away.
Stop share.
The escape key on your keyboard. There you go.
All right. And if I bring up another one.
Yeah.
Is that? Can you see that?
No, you need to share your screen again.
Oh, bugger. Right. Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. Ah, got it. technology. Share.
Okay, we got it.
Is that,
Yeah,
you got it?
yeah,
Is that the new one?
yeah.
Okay, so I did this for Evolving the Forest. That was, what, 2 years ago? Or was it last year?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago, right. So I've used the crosses there. And in that case, it was really making a reference to the crosses which foresters or tree surgeons put on trees to identify a tree, i.e. that one's going to be cut down or worked somehow. So, yeah, that takes me back from 2019 to 2018, I guess. Is that, have you got that one?
Yeah, if you use the green button, use the green button again so we can zoom in on
Oh,
it.
new shit, do I have to do,
On the image. Yeah, there you
oh,
go.
on the image.
Hey,
Okay.
yeah,
Is that it?
that's it.
Oh, right, okay. Okay, then this goes back a few more years. I'm following this trail, where these crosses come from. See if I can pin it down. So this was in about, I think, 2011, 2012 or something. So we're going back in time, and this is in a little place in the Swiss mountains, in the valleys, in the south of Switzerland. And I was with some friends who were doing some skiing. I don't do skiing myself because I'm far too much of a coward to whiz down a mountain. So I was messing around with the snow, see if I could make something. And the previous night we had had a stew with this very nice sort of stew pot here. So I cut this Swiss. This is actually a Swiss flag here, or a kind of reference to a Swiss flag, i.e. it's a cross. And Swiss flag is white on red. Is it white on red? Yeah, it's white on red. And I always get it mixed up. Is it red on white on red? And so I was just playing with the colors here, white and red. The white was already, you know, there in the snow, and the red, well, I took the stewing pan and put it into the cross. So, okay, another one. So we go back a few more years. Is that showing?
No, you need to show your screen again.
Oh, bugger. Oh, I can't even get rid of it.
Ah.
What's that in there? Oh, there you go. So, I do that. And share screen.
That's it, got it.
We got it. Okay,
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so this goes back another few years to 2004. And it's a little bit difficult to work out what's happening there, because this is a church in Saint-Lô, in the Normandy, France, and what had happened here was that you've seen those photographs of Dresden and Coventry and so on after being heavily bombed, and in the Second World War. And, the same thing had happened to Saint-Lô. It literally got flattened. Very few things left over, but it was this church here was one of the few things still kind of standing. And the facade here, so between, I'm kind of realising I'm talking to myself here. Can anyone see that cursor moving?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, yeah. Oh, amazing. Right. So the facade went from there to here, and a bomb had landed at that point and blowing the facade out. And instead of rebuilding it, the people in St. Lo decided to keep it as a memory of these dreadful days. And this whitish form in the middle is stainless steel. It's about 8 by 8 meters, and it's going down the steps. So you imagine something like taking a carpet and just rolling it down the stairs. So I remember having agonies measuring it out. I would measure it again and again and again and again and again, because once all those pieces of metal were cut, it was fixed. So I was absolutely having, every time there was a little sort of 1 millimeter difference, I would go through the whole lot again and work it out. And finally we got it in place, and because it all had to fit down exactly into those steps. This little, no, not this little, but this other cross that's below it is actually part of the church, which there'd probably been some kind of pinnacle there which had been blown off. And I didn't know that until I actually asked the pastor if I could go up to the top and photograph it from the tower. And then I looked down and I saw this other cross there. So there you go. That's another cross crossed off.
Rob, I'm going to stop you there.
Oh, we're going home?
We're
home tonight?
But we've got a few questions for you.
Oh, okay.
We can put the rest of the work on the website, by the way. So Gwen's asking about materials, and she was asking what kind of materials you're working with. Obviously, you work with lots of different things, but that piece that you're showing now,
yeah,
is really interesting because you said it was stainless steel.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So when you're actually on the ground and you are at the level, what are you seeing it as white? Are you seeing it as a reflective steel?
Well, it's a polished stainless steel.
Okay.
So it's not mirror polished. So mirror polished stainless steel is where it is literally so highly polished that it looks like a mirror. But you can also have polished stainless steel, so it reflects, but it doesn't reflect like a mirror. So that,
right,
you get a sort of fuzzy reflection. But obviously here, it's kind of reflecting the sky. If I had been photographed, the photographs from another level show a completely different kind of picture. So yeah. Would anyone else like to ask Bob a question about the work? Peony has a question. Peony, do you want to ask your question?
Sorry, I was just asking, I might have missed it, but how is it that the cross came about as being your motif throughout all your work? What made you choose it? And also, is your work commissioned, or is it on spec, or a variety, or? That was my question.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, I mean, I was interested myself to know where the cross came from. And I kind of might arrive there in the next couple of images, but I haven't actually used it that much. As you see, I had one in 2020, 2019, 2009. There you go, 2011. Then we're here, 2004. The next one will be in 1991. I think there's been some use of the cross between those points, because I didn't want to show every image, but it's I think we might arrive to a kind of answer if we just go on a little bit further to the next.
Go on then. Show us the next.
Should we do that?
Yeah.
Okay, because we haven't got much time anyway. So
we haven't got any time.
Oh, I haven't got any time. God, I almost got rid of you there. Hold on a sec. I'll take another one. See if I can work this out. Okay.
Okay, got it. Okay, good.
Oh, right. Okay. So this was in another life. When I was doing glass, or some people call it modern stained glass, or architectural stained glass, or glass art in architecture. Not very sharp, is it? And I think that I don't think the cross, I think, is not necessarily how do I say this? It's one of several motifs that I use occasionally. But I think it all comes down to a kind of my predilection for geometry. So stripes, circles, triangles and stuff like that. So here you can actually, these are two windows I did for a chapel of rest, i.e. a place where people have a service before someone's interned or cremated or whatever. And you might be able to pull out some crosses out of this quite complicated series of interlocking or overlapping forms. The actual idea from this one was to do with, you see there's kind of two circles there in a way, and I was kind of imagining this pathway leading through these two circles. You could say a circle of life, and the next circle, which is another kind of life, possibly. And you might even see a sort of a crucifix as well. Depends on how you look at it. Okay.
Well, I'm going to suggest, if you are happy, that we make sure the work's available on the website.
All right then.
And that we call it quits there, because we're over time and people are starting to drift away. So
drift away, getting bored.
No, they're not. Well, they're not getting bored. We've just gone over time.
Right. I only have one more image to show. Okay.
Well, we'll make sure it's there. Okay. And make sure it's visible.
Right.
Because I think we're already 10 minutes over, so we should.
Okay.
We should stop it there. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I say we will put the website up. We will put the video up on the website, and Bob's images and any other images from today as well. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next month on the first Friday, whatever date that is. And if you want to present, as usual, just let me know. Just send me an email. As you can see, it doesn't have to be scary. It can be as informal as you want it to be. We're getting fairly booked up. I think we're booked up till May now. But do let me know if you want to do a sharing. And otherwise, I think we're just going to say goodbye and thanks for coming.
Okay,
Thank you, Richard.
bye-bye,
Thank you.
everyone.